Future of Field Service podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Nicastro. Today we're sharing on the podcast a panel discussion with Reeve Bunn, President of DSL, Mark Rentschler, Director of Customer Support at Makino, and Rudy Goedhart, Senior Director of Business Intelligence at Spencer Technologies. This panel discussion first took place during the IFS Virtual User Conference, and it's a discussion around how these companies have made changes within their business to adapt to new customer demands in a COVID and post-COVID world. Hope you enjoy.
I'm Sarah Nicastro. I run Industry Resource Future of Field Service, where I am regularly interviewing service leaders. And this year, obviously, a lot of our conversations have focused around how companies are navigating COVID-19 and working to serve customers in new and different ways. So I will let each of you introduce yourselves. If you can tell us about your company and your role, and of course, your name and anything else you would like to share. Reeve, can you start?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So good morning, everybody. My name's Reeve Bunn. I'm the president of a company called DSL. We're based in Western Canada, and we're in the commercial food service industry. So think restaurants, convenience stores, grocery. Those are the customers that we sell, service, maintain, warranty, all of their equipments. We're really proud we've been in business for 104 years, and we're all about creating moments of joy. So that's us in a nutshell.
Awesome. Mark, can you go next?
Good morning. Thank you, Sarah. I'm Mark Rentschler. I'm with Makino. Makino is a global machine tool manufacturer. I'm responsible for the customer support of those machines in both North and South America and Central America. Our machines produce everything from automotive and aviation parts to medical componentry, anything that you can assume as metal cutting, including your iPhone case or something else. So obviously a lot of demanding markets and a lot of demanding customers with high value and high volume production.
Great. And Rudy? Rudy, I think you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
No, not really. We can hear you, but not. You're really muffled.
Still barely?
Mm-hmm.
Oh no. This worked a second ago. How is it now?
Slightly better. There you go. No.
Okay. So one time.
Maybe try without the headphones.
Okay, yeah.
There we go. Perfect.
Okay. I'll just take off the headphones. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I'm Rudy Goedhart. I'm with Spencer Technologies. So Spencer Technologies has been in business for about almost 50 years now. We are a technology lifecycle solution partner for multi-site retail organizations. And I know that's a mouthful, but basically we just support all the technology in large retail organizations. We set up the stores, the cash wraps, cash registers, point of sale, camera, CCTV, network, phone systems, digital signage. We set them up when a new store is being built, construction. We do any rollout projects, any upgrade projects, and we service all the technology in those stores until tear down or relocation, or hopefully never any of those.
Sounds good. All right, so I have had the good fortune of speaking with each of these gentlemen before, and I'm very excited to bring them together for this session today, where we're going to be centering the conversation around how each of these folks and their organizations have pivoted to meet changing customer needs this year, and any insights and advice they can share from the lessons they've learned in doing so. So we'll be talking, of course, about the technology that they use and rely on to facilitate a lot of these changes, but also, some of the other aspects of change that has taken place this year in terms of, processes and more agile decision making and culture and people and each of those things. I have some questions prepared for these guys, and I'm going to walk through them, but feel free to submit questions as we're going along, and we will answer those at the end as well. Okay, so to start, let's kind of paint the picture for our listeners on where we are now versus where we were, December of last year or January of this year. So we know that our world is different. What our customers want and need from us is different, and we've had to be adept in evolving to meet those needs. So, can you share with our listeners, kind of the overview of how have your customer needs and wants changed this year, just to sort of set the stage for us talking about how we're changing to meet those needs. So Rudy, can you start?
Absolutely. So being in retail technology, this year has actually been quite challenging for us, right? As most retail locations have been closed or heavily impacted by the COVID crisis. So the major changes that we saw, so COVID initially shut down everything, right? COVID initially closed all the locations. All of our customers had either their stores closed temporarily and some unfortunately permanently. So it was very impactful. The biggest changes that we saw once the initial crisis kind of started becoming part of the ongoing reality is that so all the upgrade projects were on hold. Everything that Spencer as a normal organization did stopped. But there was also a lot of opportunities to increase what we were doing for our clients. The biggest change was partnership. So instead of just being a solution provider, we found ourselves more into a consulting partner position, because since we service so many of our retail organizations' customers, we kind of saw what they were all doing. And we were able to really communicate that back to the other organizations. So we partnered up with them. And then there are some other items such as technology. A lot of our clients are looking at different types of technology where the upgrades in general were put on hold, right? We're no longer replacing the equipment. We're no longer upgrading technology. We were installing some new things. And one very tiny but very frequent example is the BioGuard for pin pads. All of a sudden, we're sending out thousands and thousands, actually more like tens of thousands of BioGuards for pin pads. And, some cases installing technicians or sending technicians out in the field to install those BioGuards, as well as guard screens over their point of sale register. So everything changed with COVID, but it's a different world. And it's not all bad. It definitely allowed us to step into a partner role with our clients, which is fantastic.
Yeah, good. Reeve, what about you? What can you share about, what DSL customers need and are asking for now versus, the very beginning of the year?
Yeah, well, a lot of it is very much akin to what Rudy said. So as I mentioned earlier, a lot of restaurants are our customers. And so all of you know what happened in the restaurant industry, and there's a lot of parallels to what Rudy was describing in retail there. And so that was a big adjustment. You had closures, then you had graduation to drive-through only or takeout only. And like Rudy said, it forced us to kind of shift the realm that we deal with these folks in and try to find common solutions that we could bring to them. So we had a great lens on the industry as a whole, and we could do things like, here's how you can safely shut down all your machines. We'll come out and do that. We tried to really be partners with them in the same light as Rudy described, and know that they're hurting in terms of their financial positions. So complementary services, offer services that may help them when they're short on staff. So it took all of those forms, and that's a big industry for us. And then conversely, you have other customers who were on the other side of the fence, where they're kind of taking a lot of the demand that other industries are losing, and they're trying to fill it. Grocery, convenience, and they're deemed essential services. And so they have all kinds of different challenges where things are actually very busy for them. They're trying to figure out, how do they serve prepared meals in a safe way? How do they meet a growing demand? And so that allowed us to bring some of our restaurant experience and restaurant expertise into their world and help them try to amp up to meet demand. So it really was a combination of different needs across the spectrum of our customers, from struggling to thriving. And we just had to find where we could add value to each one of those groups.
That makes sense. And Mark, what about for Makino? What has this looked like for you all?
Well, first of all, you have to be named as an essential business provider, and as a provider of machines for both medical and the defense industry segments, that was a very quick determination during the initial phases of COVID. But that then emphasizes the safety protocols that were needed to essentially protect our employees. I mean, I had 150 plus service engineers in the field on any given day, working in a huge variety of industrial facilities. And those interactions were very critical to maintain safety. And even now, as of just this month, we've only had 4 confirmed cases of coronavirus, even during all of these 6 months of the pandemic. So the safety and safe interactions were critical for all of our staff. But I also see a tremendous change in some of the customers, because capital preservation in their businesses has become very critical. As Reeve and Rudy just indicated, the numbers of closures and the impact in those industries is huge. And so capital preservation becomes critical, but also then when you're in a service environment, everything's a negotiation. And there's obviously a need to escalate quickly. Those people that are running their machines, they're doing it in a high demand environment, and they need things working effectively. So the fuse is short, and the response has to be there. And we see that evolving, I think, even more so to provide contractual guarantees for fast response in the field, particularly beyond our phone support center and things of that nature. But the field response has to be escalated and moved very quickly.
That makes sense. And I think that what you all are sharing is very representative of a lot of the conversations I've had with folks this year. So obviously the situation is incredibly challenging, professionally, personally, for everyone in certain ways. But I think the organizations that are reacting well, as best they can, are, not trying to fight the areas of the business that they're not going to make progress in right now, but rather trying to look for opportunities within the business to pivot and evolve and be agile to meet new needs. So Rudy, you mentioned, your customers have been very interested in the insight you glean from working across retail organizations on what you can share related to how other companies are handling this crisis, right? So that's been a new area for Spencer to come in and be consultative and build more loyalty around your customer base and provide new insights and new services. Reeve, you talked about being able to, okay, unfortunately, restaurants aren't going to be operating at full capacity right now, but how can we help those customers close down their facilities safely and effectively? And what are some of the other things we can do with the customers on the grocery side who are, really ramping up right now? And how do we, basically make the best of an unfortunate situation? But I commend each of you because, I think that it would be very easy to sit back and just panic and just look at how different things are and not really know what to do. And instead, each of you and your organizations have figured out how you need to evolve and work within the realities of what business looks like right now. So I want to talk about some of the ways that becomes possible, right? So we understand it's unfortunate that it has to happen, and we understand that customer needs are far different, whether less or more than they were at the beginning of the year. So let's shift the conversation to talking about some of the aspects of what it takes to pivot and to become more agile and to deliver different types of insights or services to our customers based on what their needs are now. So we can talk about anything you guys would like, anything that you think is relevant for the discussion. It can be around technology, it can be around other aspects of change, whatever you're willing to share. So any volunteers?
Sure, I can get started, Sarah. There's a number of elements that I think companies should be examining if they haven't already. One is the growth of live chat features within their web properties. Obviously, with the distance and people not being in the office and working remote, live chat has just grown dramatically, and we've seen that over the last 6 months. Our portal, our customer portal, has become increasingly more important. Our parts ordering online via the portal is now over almost 33% of our total parts orders. So you see the change in buyer behavior and the transactions shifting to the online environment, even further than people buying on Amazon or wherever. We've seen a dramatic increase in requests for distance learning. Even though in complex machine tools, we did a lot of experiential training for both operations and maintenance. What you simply can't run in-person training classes and sustain safe working environments for both the employees and the customers. So we see a huge growth in distance learning, online learning, and video-based learning. And our training group has really shifted to produce those types of assets and then be able to launch those effectively for the customer base. And I think one of the more important shifts is, I think, going to be the continued growth in our case, machine monitoring through our Internet of Things, for lack of a better term, Industry 4.0 offering, which is MH Max, the Makino Health Maximizer. This is a tool that is monitoring the function of the machine and providing predictive alerts long before you have a machine stoppage or an alarm that causes a machine stoppage. And those technologies, I think, are going to provide an immense amount of value to the customer as they focus on their OEE, their overall equipment effectiveness and their productivity. And these shifts have been, they've been in the marketplace, but I think accelerated dramatically over the last 6 months. And I think that will continue.
Mark, those are really good points. I think across the board, we're seeing this acceleration of some of these themes. And the points that you brought up are relevant really across industries, right? When you talk about things like live chat and customer portal and online ordering, I mean, customers want control, right? And I think in the current landscape, we probably crave more control because there's so much out of our control, right? So you want to feel as though you're in the driver's seat when it comes to your service experience. And to your point, just now related to IoT and earlier, this ability to start to guarantee outcomes is critical, I think, for today's organizations. I mean, that really is where future is going, right? And we've talked quite a bit about the fact that there's a lot of complexity that goes into being able to do that. And your customers don't care about that complexity. They want the simplicity. So you need to be able to take the onus of that complexity on and sort all of that out from a technology standpoint, from an operational standpoint, from a business process standpoint, to be able to just deliver. So I think that's a very good point as well. Reeve or Rudy, what would you guys like to share?
Yeah, I agree with everything Mark said, and so I won't go down that path, short of just saying ditto. Experiential training is changing, and that's going to video. How do you have some more augmented reality interactions with customers that assist them to diagnose and troubleshoot right on site while you're thousands of miles away? So agree with all of that. And I guess to take it a different way, so for us, it's really become what are our customers' needs going to be going forward? Because I think in every business, in every boardroom, everywhere, we're all sitting here saying the same thing you just said, Sarah. Things are changing rapidly. We dump the accelerant onto the business plan. And so what does that look like? And we're trying our best to have those conversations because we think that technology will be a supporting piece of that, but ultimately the underlying desires of the customer should be helping us guide us to the right technologies. And so it could be a change in how we manage our time and materials versus our contracts, or subscription-based offerings to customers, or full life cycle, switching it from an asset to an OPEX for a fairly expensive piece of food equipment. So those are all the things that we're exploring right now, but we're kind of taking that step back and we're saying, let's start with the customer in this discussion. Let's be very intentional about that. And let's really try to understand what are their next 6 months, 12 months looking like? Because we all know for everybody, it's dramatically different. And so we're trying to use that as our.
It's a very good point. Rudy, what would you add?
So one of the things that we're starting to do a lot more that is a result of this year, right, is less hands and feet. So a lot of our technology needs and a lot of our customers' technology needs in the field required hands and feet, a technician on site. So we're really looking into how can we still advance your technology within your stores, at your sites, without needing that hands and feet of a technician disrupting your location, right? Because less people on the ground right now is better. So two of the things that we're doing, the first one is we're seeing how far we can push the staging and production of devices so that the field portion is significantly minimized. And a good example of that is any type of mobile point of sale. We'll stage these devices, we'll set them up for the stores, and then that's how far we will go. We'll send them to the locations, and then the second they authenticate to their wireless network, it downloads all the rest from their local store network. So it's practically become a no technician needed technology, but similar in remote deployments, right? Upgrades to the existing system. Instead of sending a guy with a USB drive or a girl with a USB drive to these locations, what we now do is just we work with our clients, we partner with them and take a look at remote deployment capabilities. How can we remotely upgrade your environments with 3 clicks from the manager on duty instead of us sending a field technician? So it's a lot of sustainability through remote assistance these days.
So Rudy, less hands and feet. What is the driver of that?
It scares. What's
that?
Right? The driver is the scare of COVID, right? Any technician walking into your location is a potential risk on that. He touches everything in the store.
Right.
Yeah, it's basically the scare of people these days.
Okay. And the reason I ask that is because there has to be a primary driver, but there's a lot of secondary, right? And a lot of secondary benefits. And the reason I brought that up is, so Reeve, you hit on a very important point, which is to react well to the circumstances we're all in. I think the most critical aspect is you have to be tuned in to what your customers need, right? I mean, you could be working feverishly to do whatever you need to improve the delivery of the service they wanted January 1st, and it will all be for naught, right? So if you're not tuned into what's changed for them, what will their future look like? What do they need now and what do they want tomorrow? Any of the other aspects of what we're discussing are irrelevant. So I think it's really the marriage of what are those customer wants and needs, and what do we need to do as an organization from a process perspective, from a technology perspective, to put us in a position to meet and exceed those needs. So Rudy, I asked that because it's a really good point. Those customers end of last year would have been perfectly comfortable with people, coming in and doing all of these things. And that is a really good example of how this is a major accelerator of change, right? Because I would argue that even when customers were comfortable with that, it still would behoove Spencer to have less hands and feet on the ground, right? I mean, it's more efficient, it's more effective, it's more, higher productivity for you to be able to do whatever you can remotely. But them not wanting people there drove you to reach that outcome faster because it's important to your customer base. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and there's one addition to that, which is the general comfort level, right? Similar to how we're noticing that within our own organizations right now. People working from home, people working remote, us doing virtual conferences, us doing virtual training sessions, us doing virtual everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
The level of comfort that we've now gained over the last 6 months is it's unprecedented to where it was before, right? People are now just working from home. That's okay. We're doing everything remote, and all of a sudden we're opening up our clients' comfort levels to those remote assistance and remote
Right.
capabilities, which have elevated significantly over the past 6 months as well.
Yeah. I did a presentation last week for another conference, and I was talking about three kind of macro themes that I've picked up on over this year from all of the conversations I've had with folks like you guys. One is openness to change. There's more openness to change than there ever has been because it's a necessity, right? And so whether that's the business realizing the need to change, an individual employee realizing the need to work differently, or a customer realizing the benefit of some of these things where they would have been hesitant before. That's a big theme. The second, Reeve, you hit spot on, which is closeness with customers. And the third is this acceleration of digital transformation as the great enabler of meeting these needs. So I agree. I think this openness to change is huge. And I think also, Reeve, in the podcast you and I did a few months ago, it all blends
Something
together,
like that.
something like that. We talked about it's been an interesting experience for you to be reminded or to have illustrated for you what the business is truly capable of when you need to change fast. So can you speak to that point a little bit?
Yeah, well, I'd be happy to. First of all, since we talked, Sarah, we went back and we do quarterly executive sessions, and we went into this session, and you kind of expect that your future plans are just going to all be turned upside down. And we had this amazing aha moment as we got towards the end of the session that really, when we looked longer term, 3 years out and beyond, it was the same stuff. It was just that the speed at which we had to accomplish various pieces of that had changed dramatically. Mm-hmm. So some of it had gotten way closer and way more immediate. Some of it had pushed out. And kind of going back to your question, to me, this has been an amazing focus driver, right? All of the stuff that we just kind of do because it's the right thing to do, but it's not really that important to the business. When you have that moment of clarity in April and all of this is happening, it all goes away. Mm-hmm. Things that are really, really, really important for the business, that becomes all that matters. So you get so unified around the path forward, at least in DSL's case, we got so unified around the path forward that all of a sudden the speed at which we were accomplishing things would have been unheard of a year ago, mm-hmm. right? And we like to think of ourselves as a fairly nimble, innovative company, but I think we floored ourselves in what we could do when we really put our minds to it. And so it was a light bulb that went on, and it just reminded me of the power of focus.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Mark, what are your thoughts on this increased pace of change, and how have you seen that or not at Makino?
I think there's two. The customers looking, as you've just described, for guaranteed outcomes, Sarah, but also I think from our perspective, from a business-based perspective, we're looking for sustainable revenue out of the customer support organization. I think the pressures that COVID has applied also indicate from a business basis how to think about and how to organize around ways to generate additional and sustainable revenue paths going forward. So I think that's an area that we've explored. The IoT functionality is certainly one of those. And I think the guaranteed outcomes really have to continue to be explored because to Rudy's and Reeve's point, that closeness to the customer is what's going to drive those solution sets coming out of this.
Mm-hmm. So Reeve and Rudy, what are your thoughts on identifying new or different revenue streams for the business going forward?
All right. So So the whole situation was a huge eye-opener for Spencer, right? Retail was affected very heavily, same as restaurant business, and we're actually in restaurant business as well. So everything we did shut down for a couple months. And it opened our eyes into the biggest change that we as an organization needed to do is we needed to ground ourselves more into the essential businesses. We really are now aggressively chasing essential business. Let's get more pharmacy customers. Let's get more grocery stores, the real liquor stores, right? The real important stuff. And grocery stores. But yeah, we're really chasing essential business, but we have to react real aggressive when all of this happens. And for us, unlike the first thought was not, hey, how are we going to make sure that we can support our clients in new business, et cetera, et cetera. Our first thought was, let's ground this ship, right? Our president mentioned it very cleanly. We got to land this ship, because if we don't land the ship first, we risk going under. So we landed the ship, and then we said, okay, we're safe. Now what can we really do, right? Because the sustainability and the general survivability of the organization was very important for us. And now we're just partnering more. I'm saying partnering a lot, but it's really been a big, important portion of what we're doing going forward. We just sit down with the clients virtually, and we say, hey, look at what we can do for you. A lot of what we do is value add. I'm not going to twist that. It's not financially beneficial to do a lot of the things that we are doing today, but we are grounding ourselves into a very good position with these clients as a solid partner that is able and willing to help them getting through these things. So it was mentioned earlier, we've reduced some, we've eliminated a lot of our maintenance contracts on a monthly basis simply because it didn't really live through the period. We try to help, and we try to set ourselves aside as that partner, and that's going to help us going forward.
I think that's where FSM, you've got to have an effective management tool. FSM also delivered for us the IoT portal that enables us to auto-generate a phone task based on a machine alert, and those kinds of functionalities that come with FSM are going to be essential as we all address these challenges for the future from a service standpoint.
Yep.
Yeah, and just to add to what the other gentleman said, Sarah, so for us, we had this a short story, but we had a vendor that went the other way from value add with us. So we were their customer, and they tightened the ropes, right? And so we had been a customer of theirs for a long time, and we experienced the other side of this, and we very clearly said that we are not going to be that type of a company. Right. So I think you had this choice to make of how hard are we locking down to protect ourselves versus how can we offer value to our customers. So we jumped on the add value bandwagon very fast. And our goal was to put something out in front of a customer that we think would help them before any of them ask. And so we, by the end of March, we had a sort of a laundry list of things that we were trying to do for our customers that we thought in all of their different circumstances might be able to help them, whether that was financially, whether that was just making sure that their assets and their equipment was in good stead if they were closing or if they were busy or whatever the case was. And that hurt us, right? That wasn't good for us as a business financially. But it didn't take long for us to start to hear from those customers that, wow, thank you for looking out for us. And so it's our view that it's going to come back to us in the long term. And we took the short-term pain. To Rudy's point, I mean, we were in a position that we felt we would be okay to do so. You gotta land the ship first. We were comfortable we'd land the ship, but that was a very fast pivot to let stack up a bunch of things that we wouldn't normally do to help everybody through this.
That makes sense. A couple other points I want to touch on before I hand it back to Emily. I guess the first is talking about, with needing to be more agile, with needing to pivot and do things differently than we've done before. One of the necessities of that is an increased pace in terms of decision making, right? So things are changing daily, and companies have had to adjust to, reviewing data and making business decisions far more frequently than they maybe had before. So comments on that, as well as, really any comments on how has technology enabled you to navigate this time and be able to land the ship and focus on customer relationships in the way that you have?
So,
sure. Go ahead, Rudy.
Okay. So data analysis is everything, right? So I didn't say what I did at Spencer earlier today, but I'm the business intelligence director. So for me, data is everything. Having a system that allows all the data to be input properly allows you to extract it properly. And for our customers, that's invaluable. The ability to show all their technology, their failure rates, how much data stopped, to really see what it would be to minimally support technology, to keep it running longer, to Mark's point, proactively find out what's going on with these devices prior to having any problems happen. It's absolute key. For us, IFS FSM is it's actually everything we use in the entire organization, and we use it extensively across everything we do. And by that logic, we can really share that analysis back to our clients, and not just over their own equipment, but also how their failure rates and how their technology measures up against the same technology used by our other clients. And we can share, look, customer X was using the same technology you were using today. They upgraded to equipment Z, and as a result, they saw a failure rate decrease of X, right? So you can really help them be that partner by having all the data come from one environment, and that's where FSM for us is. It's invaluable.
Mark?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Reeve.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah. To what Rudy said, the life cycle of information that we can provide customers is a game changer to them, and so we're not just going in there and saying, yeah, let's replace these ones. We've got a great case on why it'll help their business. Sometimes maybe they shouldn't replace the one that's just the oldest, right? And we can provide them all the color around the various factors they might consider when they're going to replace equipment. I would say in the crisis itself, if I were to pick sort of two technologies that were key to us, then that changed the most dramatically. One was the enhanced video troubleshooting, or that augmented reality type of troubleshooting, where, to the points that both mentioned already, there were a lot of reasons not to be on site. In certain businesses, in certain geographies, and that just let us really open up the doors on that. We had been doing it before, but this opened everybody's eyes to how powerful that truly can be, and how many different ways we can use it. So we used it as a customer support tool beforehand. That went up significantly, but then even internally as a training tool, right? So Mark was talking about this earlier. The idea that we were going to take two technicians and put them side by side in a vehicle to go out to a site and go into a business and train became a non-starter. And so we had to find different ways to start to train. And that was one key tool. Video was another key tool. So that's one. And the second one, I think, is just contract management. We had to become very flexible in how we manage our monthly subscription all-in service contracts. We had to become flexible how we handle our fixed fee contracts, and the nimbleness in the technology to analyze what was the right thing to do and then quickly be able to do it was invaluable the last 6 months.
Yeah, and I would have to add, Reeve, the use of augmented reality in service, particularly for companies such as ours, has been incredibly important when you have exceptionally complex diagnostic and troubleshooting efforts within a very complex machine tool or a complex system, automated system. And this is going to be a rapidly changing and fast evolving utility. And I think that with IFS partnering with one of the key providers of augmented reality services will be critical, because it also lets you link in that data and share documentation effectively that to your field technician that will be immensely valuable in shortening the mean time to repair, as well as really providing the customer directly and their own maintenance staff's capability that heretofore they would not have even been able to dream about. So it's going to be a huge benefit in the future.
All right, one last question. We can do a speed round, but I don't want to leave it out because I want to hear the answers. So Reeve, I'm going to start with you. Biggest lesson you as a leader have learned throughout this year?
Okay, well, I think the power of focus, and then we haven't talked about this side of it as much, but the importance of communication to our team internally. And Mark talked about safety, field safety, but everybody is so unsure about what's going to happen, right? And so the ability to communicate with the team openly, honestly, regularly, and try to say, here's where we're at, here's what's going on. Those are my two biggest takeaways. You can kind of take that for granted sometimes, right? You just assume people know what's happening in the business and that everybody's on the same page. They're not. We weren't. So the communication around what was going on being regular, and then that piece I spoke about earlier of, boy, if we really hone in on a few key things, nothing can stop us. So the power of that focus to get things done.
Thank you. Mark?
Well, Reeve, after 40 years in manufacturing, I can tell you, communication, you can never have enough of it. And I hate to say it, but you used to be able to just go to the next office or the next, section of cubicles and grab the person and have a conversation. Well, now you got to organize a Teams meeting and do all this other stuff. But you cannot understate the value of effective communication, both internally and with your customer. And look, we all have to communicate bad news sometimes, but the earlier you do it and the faster you do it, the better you can generate the planned outcomes that the customer desires. So both internal and external communications, you cannot understate the value of those, and you cannot over communicate. So I agree.
Good. Rudy?
Well, the communication, I'm with 100%, right? No news is nerving at best. But partnership, I stated again, right? I had a provider similar to Reeve where they would not cut down on their expenses to us. So we ended up paying, I don't know, $26,000 on monthly fees for one tiny little effort for 3 months. It really rubbed us the wrong way. We will not be extending that contract. So to our customers, we did it completely in reverse. We'll be your partner. We'll help you through these times. This is not about making money. I hate to say it. Being in business is about making money, but not right now. Right now, it is to sustain relationships with your clients, to get out ahead, and ultimately we'll make that money back. But right now, we want to be a partner, and that'll pay off in the long term.
Absolutely. I wrote an article very early on when this all started, and one of the points I made is the way you treat people right now, they will remember for a very long time. So whether that's, your employees and how you communicate with them, or, obviously your customers and how you support them through this, you of course have to balance that with being able to stay in business. But, I think that the efforts you all are making to, support them and have those true partnerships will pay off in the long run for sure. So thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your stories. Emily, I know I took too much time. Apologies. I'll hand it back to you.